Okay, so we are now on sentence structure. It's our 26th lesson, and we're looking at the 4 basic sentence structures in English. So this is really key when you get to complex sentences, you get to sentences with lots of words, to figure out the structure of the sentence so you can understand the meaning. It also helps us in our writing if we have a choppy um, essay or paragraph that isn't flowing well, then we can look at our sentence structures and see what variety we can add, or if we can take maybe simple sentences and combine them. So let's look at the sentence structures today. Again, you have a handout PDF in your Praxis lesson plans where you can print that out and take notes along with me. I highly recommend that. All right, we have simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and then the mixed bag of compound complex. Let's start with simple sentences since it's the easiest one. What does that mean? It's basically what we've been working a lot with. Simple sentences are sentences that have one independent clause. That's it. One independent clause. There's nothing else to it. There's no dependent clauses or subordinate clauses attached. Okay? Now they can have, like we've seen, they can have compound subjects like Bill and Ted. They can have compound verbs like ran and jump. They can have compound objects. So parts of the sentence can have a complexity, but it's still a simple sentence. And of course, they can have phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases. They can have adjectives, they can have adverbs, but they are basically a simple sentence because they have an independent clause only. The rest of those things are either compound parts or modifiers. Okay, so sentence structure, simple sentence, basic rules, has one independent clause, and it can have some compound elements, and it can have phrases. An example of how to diagram a simple sentence that has compound parts is below. The professor and her colleagues are studying glaciers and avalanches. And you see that you have compound subjects, professor and colleagues, and you have compound direct objects, glaciers and avalanches. All right, let's go to the compound sentence. A compound sentence has 2 independent clauses. Simple has 1, compound has 2. Again, they can have compound elements, and they can have phrases, and they can have modifiers, but a compound sentence is where you are connecting 2 or more independent clauses. So an example of a compound sentence is Boggs hit the ball well, comma, but, there's our conjunction to our second independent clause, he ran to the wrong base. And when we diagram compound sentences, we use this little dash line, and then we put the conjunction straight across, and then the dash line again. Couple notes on punctuation with compound sentences. Independent clauses are separated by a conjunction and a comma, like we just saw with the word but. That's the conjunction, and the comma is there. Independent clauses can be separated by a conjunction and a semicolon. And you can use just the conjunction if the independent clauses are short and they're very closely related in terms of their meaning. Now, some also say that you can use a comma, just a comma, to connect two independent clauses. Others are real ticky about that and call that a comma splice. So you got to be very careful with just a comma. So simple, one independent clause. Compound, two or more independent clauses. And then our example of how we diagram with the dashed line, straight line across with our conjunction. So if it's just a semicolon, we would just put the semicolon there and then another dash line down. Complex sentences. Okay, what is complex is that now we start putting those pieces together. So we have independent clauses are the first two categories. One, the simple has one, the compound has more than one. In a complex sentence, this is where we're adding our clause. So a complex sentence is one independent clause, and it can have one or more subordinate clauses. It can have an adverb clause, an adjective clause, a noun clause, or combination. Okay, let's look at some examples in how to diagram. Here's an example of an adjective clause. We slowly entered the theater where Lincoln was shot. Okay, we entered is the core of the sentence. We is the subject pronoun, entered is the verb. What did we enter? Theater, direct object. And then we have our modifier, slowly, which is how we entered, and the, which is our article adjective modifying theater. Where is our connector to our clause. And our clause embedded in there is Lincoln was shot. Lincoln is our subject, was shot, was is our helping verb, shot is our verb. Another way you can do the dash line, this one is straight. Some people like to do with an angle, make a right angle, and that's fine too, whatever your preference is. Okay, let's look at some more. Now we are using relative pronouns as our conjunctions to our clause. So let's look at how this works. Remember, I told you that subordinate conjunctions are the WHs. So you'll see that in this next sentence. And I told you that in the noun clause recording. That woman who just left the room will probably be the next president. Now that is being used as an adjective to describe woman. So woman is our subject. Will be is our helping verb. Probably with the ly is our adverb modifying our verb phrase, will be. And be is the verb, so it's the linking, the be form. And so president is renaming, so it's the predicate nominative. And the and next is modifying president. Now, who just left the room is a noun clause. Who is the subject, and it's also the subordinate conjunction. But when it's doing dual purpose, you want to put it in the subject. Left and is the action, and room is the direct object. Notice that this particular example is not using the tree. Okay, because it's being introduced by a relative pronoun, it's being diagrammed as a relative clause, even though it's a noun clause. Okay, or an adjective clause, describing the woman who left the room. So that's why it's not a tree. Let's look at, there's two other examples here that show the same thing. One, though, is just in this part of the direct object. and the other is the object of the preposition. But since we were on noun clauses, let's jump to the noun clause. Okay, so in this example, our noun clause, which is making our sentence complex, is acting as the object of the preposition. All right? The couple had a huge argument about where they would live. Who had a huge argument? The couple did. Thus, the modifier. What's being said about couple? Couple had. What did they have? Argument. That's our direct object. And then what's describing the argument? What kind? Huge. Which? A. And then about is our preposition. So a prepositional phrase is modifying or describing the argument. About, and what's being used as the object of the preposition as a single noun is this phrase. They, where they would live. And where is modifying would live. And it's also being used as a subordinate conjunction. Ooh, it does two jobs. Okay, let's look at another noun clause. This one's acting as the subject of the noun. Okay, and we actually have two in this sentence. One is the subject and one as a predicate noun or a predicate nominative, like we like to call it. Okay, what really matters? That's our subject. That whole unit is the thing that we're talking about. Okay, so we put our little tree. What is, in this case, our noun, matters is our verb, and really is modifying or describing matters. But it's functioning as the subject of our sentence as one whole unit. Is the linking verb, and then we have a predicate nominative, a noun. But again, this whole unit is acting as the single noun, as the complement. It's not just you, it's not just know, it's what you know. And remember that a lot of times when you're doing a subordinate conjunction, it's an inverted sentence or an inverted independent clause. So you is your subject, know is your action, and you know what? What? So, big point here, complex sentences have clauses, either adjectives clauses, adverb clauses, or noun clauses. That's what makes it complex. Okay, so a complex sentence then is one independent clause, just one, and then one or more subordinate clauses, adjectives, adverbs, or noun clauses. Okay, and then our examples down here, what we just went through. Okay, last one, compound complex sentence is where we're just adding actually one more thing. So we're going from one independent clause with one or more subordinate clauses. That's a complex sentence. A compound sentence then is taking the element of the compound sentence where you have two independent clauses and the element of complex where you have one or more subordinate clauses. Okay, so that's why it's called a compound complex sentence. You're going to have two independent clauses and one or more subordinate clauses, adverbs, adjectives, or noun clauses. So here's our example. When the train goes through, the windows rattle noisily and the whole house shakes. Okay, and so what you notice here is that and jumps out at you, that it's possibly connecting either two compound elements or two independent clauses. Let's look at the first part. The windows rattle noisily. Well, we see it has a subject and a verb, so we know it's a clause. Let's look at the second that follows and. The whole house shakes. So we know that it has a subject, house, and the action of the subject is shake. So we have a compound sentence. We would diagram them on separate lines and we would connect them with the conjunction and using our dash lines, putting our conjunction in the middle and then our dash line down. Now this sentence is starting with a noun clause that's modifying rattle. Remember that modifiers of verbs ask how, when, and where, correct? How, when, and where. So when did it rattle? When the train goes through. So when is our connector, and this is actually a adverbial clause because it's modifying the verb rattle. So when connects it because it has a noun that follows it. The train is our subject. What the train's doing is it's going, and through describes where it's going. So important to remember is that you've got a compound element. You've got two independent clauses, the one in blue and the one in green being connected, and you've got an adverbial clause modifying rattle. That makes it complex. So now putting that together, you have a compound and a complex element. So compound complex sentences, two independent clauses, and then one or more subordinate clauses. I want to give you a few tips in analyzing and understanding sentence structure. These four structures, what they do is they assist the writer in rhythm and meaning. Okay, so for example, noun clauses, the ones that are either complex or compound complex sentence structures, those noun clauses improve flow of thought, and they allow like related ideas or sentences to come together for greater connectedness. So you really want to use it in your writing if your writing seems choppy. Okay? When we're analyzing sentences, the first is to help with meaning, to always look at the sentence type, not the structure, but the type. Is it giving me a command, imperative? Is it giving me information, declarative? Is it giving me information with strong meaning? Is it asking a question? So what is the purpose of the sentence? That's the first thing, and you look at the sentence type. Second, then, as I've always said, you're going to find all your phrases. That's just the additional fluff and stuff information, and you're going to put them in brackets. That'll help clear the waters a little bit on where the core of the sentence is, and if there's more than one independent clause in the sentence. Then you're going to determine the structure. This is where this comes in. You want to look at whether it has independent or dependent clauses. Those things tell you kind of the relationship of the meaning. And usually if they're two independent clauses coming together, they're very close in nature. Last, you're going to determine the pattern. This is when you look at each of the clauses and you find out their pattern. Are they subject, noun, verb, direct object, subject, noun, linking verb, predicate, nominative, or predicate adjective? This communicates that deeper relational information in the sentence. So you're learning basically how to decode meaning so you don't get fooled. Let me give you a challenge to prove the point. Let's follow these four steps to this very complicated sentence and see if we can figure out the meaning. So first, just read the sentence like you would just, kind of glance at it as you're reading. The function of the imagination is not to make strange things settled so much as it is to make settled things strange, not so much to make wonders facts as to make facts wonders. What is Chesterton talking about? All right, well, let's break it down. First, we know that it's a declarative sentence. It's just giving us information. Okay, so it's a thought. Okay. Next, we're going to find those phrases. And as you see, I've marked the prepositional phrases in blue. And then I reduced it, eliminating those things. Remember, if I made a mistake and it's a clause, then the sentence won't make sense. But if it's being used as a phrase and I eliminate it, the sentence should still make sense once those things are gone. So, eliminating what I thought were phrases, let's look at the sentence. The function is not to make strange things settled, not so much to make wonders facts. So, if I went back at the beginning, I might have been confused and thought that imagination was the subject of our sentence. But once I've identified the phrases, I realize that function is the core of at least one element of the sentence. Okay, so now let's look at sentence structure and make sure I don't have more than one core. Okay. Notice I'm going to go down here because I don't need to mess just yet with my phrases. I know is a linking verb. It's not followed by a verb, so it's not being a helping verb. So it's a linking verb. So what two things can follow a linking verb? The complements, right? Either a predicate noun or predicate nominative or a predicate adjective. Well, if you look, in this case, I've got some modifiers, but it looks to me, this is something you don't know, you haven't learned yet, but to make strange things settled, it's not telling us when in time these things are to be settled, and it has this word to that's sometimes used as a preposition, but it's not followed by a noun, it's followed by a verb. This is an infinitive verb form, and we'll learn about it later. But suffice it to say, you can see where the brackets are. What this is doing is it's being used as one whole unit to be a complement of function. Okay? It's a noun that is renaming function. Now let's do our test and make sure I'm right. Not to make strange things settled is the function. So see, these equal, so this is a complement. And then we have a semicolon, and then we have another sentence. Not so much to make wonders facts. So we have the same pattern, to make wonders facts. We have an infinitive again, and not so much is our conjunction. It's a little confusing because it's not only functioning as a conjunction, but the point here is that it's a compound complement, right? Because it's the same meaning, really. Function equals not making strange things settled. Function also equals not so much to make wonders facts. So looking at this, I told you it was tough. I gave you a tough one. You can see that there's no dependent or subordinating clauses. So we have compound elements, but we don't have a compound sentence because there's not two independent clauses. There's just one independent clause with two compound complements, predicate nominatives. And that leads us to our sentence pattern. So then what is the sentence pattern? This big long sentence is basically just has a subject, has a linking verb, and it has compound or two subject complements or predicate nominatives. Okay, this is where diagramming really, really helps. So we would start, once we figured out, got rid of the phrases, we know we could safely put function and is and everything that modifies it underneath. It's when we get to this compound part that it starts to get dicey for us. But if we start to diagram it and we split this, then we know that we have, if you can see, the slash line meaning a complement, and that whole unit is just being used as the complement, okay? We also have so much as to make strange things settled. So let's look at the sentence again. The function, we have a phrase, is, not is a modifier. Here's our infinitive phrase or verbal, to make strange things settled. Now we have so much as to make settled things strange. So this can be seen as a lot of people call it like a prepositional, I don't know what to call it, but it's a preposition that you've got three words. And then your object is this one. Okay? Then you have some more modifiers. So is modifying much in the second sentence. And to make wonders facts. And as to make facts wonders. So in this part, we've added the second modifier to modifying the subject complement. So as you can see, your brain's about to blow, and I did that on purpose, is that when you get into really complex ideas and abstract thoughts, people will write in such a way to combine things, but it may not necessarily mean that the sentence is a complex sentence because it has a lot of words. In this case, it is a simple sentence with compound parts, and the part is predicate nominative. So it's actually a very simple sentence, and it's cool in English that you can have such deep meaning in such a simple sentence. And we're all laughing because we're looking at that diagram going, that doesn't look so simple to me. Let's just review real quick, since that was such a tough go. If it'll let me go back, I'm going to go back to the last note slide and just review real quick. So what we learned today is sentence structure. How many are there? 4. We have a simple structure, that's just an independent clause. We have a compound structure, that's 2 independent clauses, no dependent clauses. We have a complex, that's where you have to have one, no more than one, independent clause, but you can have several subordinate clauses. And then the compound complex puts these 2 together. So 2 independent clauses and 1 or more subordinate clauses. And that's what you learned today. Really pretty simple, but it's very helpful to learn how to deconstruct sentence structure to understand meaning, but also how to use sentence structure to produce meaning in your writing. And we're going to practice that over the next month. All right, I will talk to you guys later. Go enjoy your day. You're done learning for a little bit.